I used to believe I knew caves like the back of my hand. You read a map, follow a compass, hold a safety rope. That's it. Caves aren't thinking things. They're just rock, dirt, water, and darkness. I believed that for 20 years, until the day I descended into Maple Ridge Cave. It was the first time I encountered something I couldn't name. It wasn't human, it wasn't animal, and it wasn't darkness. But it lived, and it's still underground, somewhere, right now. Maple Ridge Cave isn't famous. It's a 9-10 kilometers long limestone cave system on private land. Beautiful geology, lots of stalactites, wide passages. My 2 team members, Jeff and Colton, were hired to survey the depths of a newly opened branch, eroded by rainwater. The landowner said there was a knocking sound underground at night, like someone was hitting a wall with a steel pipe. He thought there were animals stuck in the crevices. That's all. Nothing strange. I believed him, until I got down about 40 meters and felt the temperature drop more suddenly than usual. The air in the cave was always cold, but cold in a natural way. This time, it was cold like walking into a morgue. Colton yoked. Andrew, did you turn the air conditioner on too hard? I laughed reluctantly, but my skin was crawling. We went deeper into the new branch. The entrance was steep, unexplored. We set anchors, dropped ropes, and descended. When we reached the bottom, the pressure gauge read -5 degrees Celsius, unusual for a limestone cave in the summer. Jeff shone his flashlight ahead. The light didn't reach far. Dust and steam hung in the air like mist. As I took a step, there was a strange echo, not footsteps, but the echo of breathing. Who's breathing? It wasn't us. We were both holding our breath. Colton whispered, "Who's in here?" Jeff replied, "Don't talk nonsense. There's no one." But I heard it. A long, heavy, slow sigh came from the passage ahead. Each breath was long, like someone choking on water. We continued. The passage led to a large room, high-ceilinged, damp stone. Water dripped down in drops, creating a steady echo. Jeff knelt down to take notes. Colton checked the compass position. I shined my flashlight at the cliffs and saw something that stopped me in my tracks. Long, even scratches on the stone, about 1/2 centimeter deep. Not from water, not a tool. It sounded like someone was trying to cling to the wall with their fingernails. I called Jeff over to look. He squinted. "Cobra? Bear? No, bears don't come this far." We argued for a few seconds. Then the knocking sounded. A click, steel on stone. Clear. Just one. Then silence. Colton froze. Jeff turned the flashlight toward the east corridor. I don't know why I whispered, "Don't answer." But Jeff spoke. "Is anyone there?" The echo went far away, then came back faintly. And after that echo there was a second click, this time closer. We retreated back the way we came. No one said a word. It felt like something larger than humans was watching in the darkness. The exit was a narrow path, about 1.2 meters high, requiring crawling. Jeff crawled first. I followed. Colton was at the end. We had only crawled 10 meters when Jeff's flashlight went out. He cursed, turned it on twice before it came back on. When the light came back on, he said, "There's something right behind me." I thought he was joking. Then I heard it. A light sliding sound across the stone like human skin scraping against limestone. I turned around and shone the light at Colton. He stopped crawling too. His face was pale. He said, "There's something crawling behind me." I shined the light. Nothing. But the darkness behind him wasn't still. There was a very slow movement, as if the darkness were breathing. We rushed out of the narrow passage. When we reached the large room, Colton almost threw up with fear. Jeff checked the anchor rope to prepare to climb. I stood close to the wall, trying to catch my breath. And that's when we heard the voice. It wasn't clear, but enough for us to understand that none of the three of us had spoken. A hoarse, choked voice, water in the throat, like someone about to drown. "Don't leave me." Jeff turned around. "Someone's stuck down here." I pulled his hand. "Listen, that voice isn't right." Colton grabbed my shoulder. "What kind of wrong?" I replied. "It's not breathing air. That voice is coming from the rock." We were silent, and the cliff in front of us shook slightly. Not hard, not like an earthquake, but like something was wriggling inside, trying to get out. Jeff panicked, tied the rope to the anchor hook. He climbed up. I followed closely behind. When we had climbed about 3-4 meters, my flashlight shone down and I saw something I still cannot explain. An arm protruded from the path we had just crawled through. Not a human arm, not an animal arm. The skin was pale, wet, and shiny, like skin that had been soaked in water for a long time. The fingers were too long, curved, the nails were peeling off. It groped, grabbed the edge of the rock and pulled. Following that arm was not a body, not bones, but a shadow rose from the rock. Not in a clear shape, like a human shadow, but thick, heavy, and there was a sound of water dripping, dripping. Colton screamed. Jeff climbed almost with desperate force. I almost slipped, my hands numb with cold. When I looked down one last time, I could have sworn I saw a blurry face in the blackness. No eyes, no nausea, just a mouth wide open, the kind of mouth someone would have if they were about to chew something. But no lips, no teeth, just a deep blackness that stretched to the earlobes. He whispered, "Don't leave me." Then my flashlight went out. I climbed in total darkness, feeling the bottom of my shoes near my heels. We escaped the cave in a panic. Colton threw up as soon as we were outside. Jeff collapsed, gasping for air. I stood, looking at the cave entrance. In the darkness inside, no light, no sound, but I knew it was there. Not a person, not an animal, not darkness, but something that had been down there all along, waiting for someone to go too deep. 3 days later, the rescue team returned to Maple Ridge. No trace. No knocking, no shaking, no cold, just a regular cave. The official report read, "No unusual geological hazards detected." Jeff Key. Colton moved states. As for me, I didn't go into any caves anymore. But sometimes on rainy nights, when the water dripped from the roof, I heard it faintly over the wind and the rain. "Don't leave me." I locked the door, turned on the light, but knew the light wouldn't chase away the thing that lived in the darkness. It didn't need light, it just needed depth, and a person too far. I've been doing rescue work for 13 years. I've pulled people out of floodwaters in caves, found people trapped in crevices no wider than a backpack, and seen teammates with broken bones, torn faces, and bloodied bodies from a stupid slip. But there's one mission that I can't forget. Not because of the danger, not because of the victims, but because of what I heard down there. It's not a story I tell rookies, not a story I tell in training, not even in my official records. It's only in my memory and in the chill I still feel under my skin every time I pass through a dark crevice. In February 2017, my team received an emergency call from the Black Heart Caverns area, a deep, narrow cave system in eastern Tennessee. A group of 3 amateur explorers tried to make it through an area called the Lungs, a passage so narrow that you had to press your chest against the rock floor, facing the other side to breathe. One of them, Ethan Lowell, got stuck. There was no way to turn around. There was no way to move forward. We set off at 10 p.m. When I entered the cave, the air felt different, cool, damp, but there was something else. A very faint, metallic smell, like dried blood on the rocks. Every time I turned on my flashlight, The steam that came out of my mouth turned into a thin mist, curling up in layers. After 2 hours of crawling through crevices and slopes, we finally reached the entrance to the lungs. The cave was completely silent, no water, no falling rocks, no wind. There was a silence, thick, like a void right next to my ear. The stone locksmith who was with us said, "The air is going down here. We have to hurry." I crawled in first. The headlamp on my helmet shone about 40 centimeters in front of me. I had to turn my head to the left to keep my airway open. Cold stone dust brushed against my cheek. My chest was pressed down so hard that every time I inhaled, I felt my ribs crack. About 6 meters in, I heard breathing. It wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone else's voice either. It was weak. It was broken. It came from up ahead, where Ethan was stuck. I called, "Ethan, stay calm." There was no response, just a sniffling sound, like someone trying to suck air back through a constricted throat. I crawled faster. As I got closer, my flashlight picked out a pair of sneakers. A little way off, a shin, then a hip. He was stuck on his side, his whole body pressed against the rock, his face turned to the darkness. I touched Ethan's leg, cold. Not cold like a corpse, cold like ice, underwater. I called out again, "Ethan, it's me." This time there was a response, but it didn't sound like a conscious voice. A whisper, very small, very close to my ear, as if it came from the crack in the rock in front of me, not from Ethan. "Don't turn it over." I froze. It didn't sound like an adult's voice. It didn't sound like a child's. It sounded like a breath being forced out under water pressure, muffled, hollow, distant. I shook my head, trying to calm myself. Surely it was just a distorted echo from the narrowness of the cave. As the team behind me passed the rope and tools, I turned and crept closer to Ethan to check. He was lying on his side, one side of his face pressed against the damp rock. I couldn't see his eyes, only his wet hair and pale skin. I put my hand on Ethan's shoulder. At that moment, I felt something moving under my hand. It wasn't his body. It was the rock. The very small stones the size of a finger were shaking slightly, as if something was shifting under the rock. I shouted, "Ethan, say something." His head jerked slightly. His mouth opened. Air came out of his throat, accompanied by a sound like someone pumping water through a rubber tube. "No, it's E." I shivered. I didn't understand what he meant, but at that moment, the rock under Ethan's face moved violently. I was startled and turned on the light. Beneath the damp gravel was a deep, narrow crevice like the mouth of something. It wasn't a natural crack. It was straight, even, and sharp. I realized he had slipped into a hollow pocket under the rock. It wasn't a cave. It looked like a hollow, like where something had lain. The rescue team outside moved in their equipment. I attached a rope to Ethan's waist and started to move back to make a slit to turn him. Then suddenly, I heard a banging sound. Not loud, not strong, but it was clear. Bang, bang, bang. Like a small fist hitting the rock face from the other side of the crack. I called out to the team behind, "Who's knocking?" No one answered. After a long while, the team leader called out, "No one's knocking. The team is standing still." He felt cold. The banging continued. This time, closer, clearer. It was like someone was under Ethan's body, smashing into the rock. I couldn't stop the rescue, even though all my instincts were screaming to run. I pulled hard on the rope, trying to turn Ethan. Rocks crunched against the bones of my arm. A crack sounded from his chest. I couldn't tell if it was a broken rib or something else. When I turned his head out of the darkness, my flashlight shone on his face. My whole body went numb. Ethan's eyes were wide. He didn't blink. His pupils were dilated. His skin was pale, but his figure didn't look like someone who had just been trapped. He looked like he had been there for a long time, like his body wasn't his anymore. I whispered, Ethan. His eyes were rotating, not in the usual direction, not left, not right. They were rotating up, then down, then back again, like the movement of water being sucked into a hole. His mouth was open, and this time, the sound that came out wasn't human. Can't get out anymore. I flinched back, not from the voice, but from the breath that was on my face at that moment, cold, damp, smelling of rotting earth and something metallic. Not fresh breath, but the smell of something that had been trapped for a long time. The rescue team grabbed the rope, pulling Ethan out as I backed away. His body slid out of the narrow crevice, leaving a trail of black mud and slime-like stains. Under the rock where he lay, the ground softened further. A dark crevice, about a hand's breadth wide, opened up like someone was opening his mouth. The team leader shone a light down, then turned it off immediately. His face was pale. On the way up, no one spoke. Ethan was no longer responsive. His heart was still beating, but weakly. His eyes were unblinking. His breathing was raspy. When he was carried out of the cave, he whispered his last words, just as the cold wind touched his face. "It's still in there." 3 days later, Ethan died in the hospital. Not from trauma, the doctor wrote. Respiratory failure of unknown cause. No one believed my account of what I heard under the rock. There was no official report. Blackheart Cave was closed indefinitely because of the risk of landslides. But I know better. I have heard it. I have felt its breath on my face. And sometimes when I lie down to sleep, I still feel that tapping sound. So small, so regular, coming from the floor. Plop, plop, plop. Not the sound of a living person, but not quite the sound of a dead person either. I've been a cave rescuer for nearly 17 years. I've pulled people out of crevices less than 20 centimeters wide and witnessed flooding that took just 3 minutes to turn tunnels into graves. But the 2018 incident at Bone Creek Caverns is something I'll never forget. Not because people died, but because what we found didn't look like humans anymore. Bone Creek Caverns isn't famous. It's not pretty. It's an old, small, dry limestone cave system, less than 3 kilometers long, for people who like the feeling of being cramped. Most of the way is just wide enough for crawling. That day we got a call from 2 college students. Their friend, Evan McCarthy, 22, had not returned after entering the White Vein Branch. It's an extremely narrow, white dusty crevice, about 40 meters long, and then dead-ended. Evan went in at 2:12 middags. By 3 p.m., he still hadn't come out. One of the 2 students heard something scratching in the rock wall. They panicked, ran to the cave entrance and called for rescue. My team and I arrived at 4:22 p.m. Inside the cave, it was pitch black. The smell of dry limestone and humidity was strong. We wrapped the rope, turned on the helmet lights, and entered White Vein. The cave was so small that I had to take off my backpack and push it forward with my knees. Every movement created white dust that blew into my mouth, salty and cold, different from normal rock dust. When we reached the middle, we saw new scratches on the rock wall. Long, deep, zigzag, not like fingernails. Not like rocks hitting each other. Like someone used something soft but extremely strong to scratch horizontally. And the deeper we went, the thicker the white dust became. So thick I had to wear a dust mask. It clung to my clothes like powder, colder than ice, and smelled a little like the rancid smell of old bones. We called Evan's name loudly. No response. Only the sound of dust falling, crackling, like light rain underground. When I reached the end of the crevice, where I couldn't get out without pushing hard with my shoulder, I saw the first thing that sent a chill down my spine. Handprints, not imprinted in dust. Handprints left in dust like imprints in snow, the size of an adult. 5 fingers. But the space between the fingers was too wide, almost twice the size of a normal hand. Next to the handprints was a long slide, as if someone had been dragged, plowed a deep line into the white dust. I told the team to stay in touch and then went deeper. My helmet light shone on a low section of the ceiling. I had to lie flat, pushing inch by inch. The air was unusually cold, so cold I could feel my breath rising like mist. Then I heard breathing, very close. Not the wind, not the rescue team behind me, but it was a slow, long breath, like someone lying close to the cliff, trying to contain the pain. I called out, "Evan, if you can hear me, answer me." No response. But the breathing stopped. I pushed a little further. The flashlight swept into a wider space, a small niche, no bigger than a wardrobe, and on the white stone floor was a shoe. The left shoe, covered in thick white dust. Inside was empty, no blood, no flesh, only a darker white dust, like something disintegrating from within. I reached out to pick up the shoe. As soon as I touched it, the dust inside the shoe blew out, flying into a small cloud. The thing that flew out had a faint fishy smell, like the smell of an operating room. Behind me, one of the team said, "Richard, do you hear that?" We were silent. And then, from deeper in the cavity, there was a sound of movement. Not the sound of falling rocks, not the sound of water. It was the sound of skin dragging on stone, slow, soft but clear. Another sound, like something touching the ceiling of the cavity, feeling its way. I raised my flashlight. The light touched the white dust falling from the ceiling, falling in long, thin strands like silk. In that dust, there were indentations running along the stone ceiling, as if someone had crawled on his belly, scratching with his elbows and knees. The spaces between the indentations were too large to be a person. We backed away. I told the team to prepare to withdraw, and my flashlight beam swept across the cliff to the right. The cliff was moving, not real rock. It was white dust on the surface of the rock, shrinking into shape, shaped like a rib, curved even, gradually appearing, then disappearing when I shone it straight, like it was pressed against the wall, covered in white dust, and only revealed when it moved. One of the team whispered, "It's not a person. It can't be." Before I could answer, a whisper came from the hole, a sound that sounded like it was coming through wet cloth. "Don't stay here." That voice didn't sound like Evan's. It was too low, too old, too dry. We retreated immediately. As I turned, I heard a strong scratching sound on the rock behind me, long, deep, like something crawling out of the wall. The ground under my belly shook slightly as if something heavy was crawling behind me. I didn't turn back. We almost dragged ourselves out of the ravine, our hands shaking, our heads banging against the rocks. When we emerged from the wide section, the scraping stopped. There was only white dust falling like rain on the tin roof. We returned the next day with the geological survey team. The White Vein Ravine was sealed by a landslide. There had been no earthquake that night. We never found Evan's body. Not a piece of cloth, not a bone. But when we examined his remaining shoes, the white dust inside was confirmed to be an unusually fragmented form of organic calcium, not like rock dust, not like animal calcium, not like any sample they had. The report was sealed. The cave was completely sealed. To this day, I still remember the breathing in the crevice, the sound of skin moving on stone, and most importantly, the indentation running across the ceiling, twice the span of a human arm. Every time I crawled into a new cave, just hearing the light dust fall, I remembered White Vein, and that sentence echoed from the white darkness. "Don't stay here. Not the words of a living person, but not exactly the words of a dead person either.